Well, Kayla said that she said people are starting to panic and they're buying toilet paper again.
Yeah, unfortunately.
How are y'all doing?
Good. I mean, Missy says it's pretty normal at the hospital, so she's not been freaking out. I mean, we did have a buddy that tested positive that we play volleyball with, and we were there with him. He thinks he got it at Wakefield. So, but he got his test results 10 days later.
God.
I know.
So I heard, don't they have like instant tests, but then they also have very not instant tests?
Yeah, I don't know, man. I mean, it makes sense because obviously no one expected any of this to happen. So it makes sense that there's good tests, there's bad tests, there's free tests, there's tests that cost money, all this stuff, and who knows?
It's a weird time.
Yeah.
Life in general is a little weird right now.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes I kind of feel like, it's really weird, but then I'm like, some people have kind of gone through this. Like, I mean, we haven't gone through like a war. Like, we haven't been drafted. We haven't, had millions of people die in a war, like American-wise. Obviously, other people, but I think it's been pretty good. I mean, it sucks that camp's been canceled, but I mean, I'm here. I'm living it. So, continuing education, I try and tell people.
With that though, are you able to, or when are you going to get to see your players?
Well, we started June 8th. So I've seen most of my players. I kind of already have an idea of who I want, who I don't. Obviously, some kids, it's kind of weird because, you kind of go, I was obviously in 5th grade, and now I'm in 9th grade, which is only 4 years apart. But, like, I mean, some of these guys are like, I had to help my dad with work, or I have a job. Like, and obviously some of them, it's an under the table thing. But, I mean, being low income, you kind of know, like, oh, all right. Some guy shows up, he's like, I worked till midnight last night at a bar because he's 18. And I mean, he's not my player for the freshman team, but
let's say that's an old freshman, but
but he's a kid who's, in the starting lineup that I still have to teach things to, so it's been crazy, the jump and then the camp. And then it kind of sucks because, I mean, some of those kids look forward to camp and have been wanting to do something. And, freshmen didn't get their season. Seniors, juniors, and sophomores didn't get to end their season. So it's like they're itching to play. And I think it's good. It's good, but it also sucks that it's camp stops. So, but it's life.
Yeah, I that's not that I feel sorry for them, but like that's who I felt the worst for was like athletes, especially high school athletes who. Particularly, I mean, I think basketball season, they didn't get to finish that, right? There was no baseball season. Like you said, soccer season was cut short. There's probably no track season at all. So all of those guys, especially like the seniors, I was like, man, it's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a few people around the country who this was their, like, hey, this was my opportunity to kind of show people or get a college to look at me or something. And now life in a different direction.
So the cool thing that I'll say about that is that if there's coaches that are invested in not just, okay, I want to win state this year, or I want to do this, and be like, okay, I want kids to go to college as well with this, even if they're not the best player on there. If you have a coach that sees, if you have a freshman, JV, and a, front head coach that are like, okay, let's get on the same team. We record the games. Any kids that are highlighted, they're like, oh, this kid could be something by his junior year or his senior year. Take highlights of them. There's apps that do it for you. Like you can create it and stuff. And then you don't run into what we just ran into where, oh, wow, you're not going to get a senior season and we have no footage on you. So colleges are just left
Yeah.
open, or you have to go onto a walk-on, where some coaches have been recording some players that they know were varsity level, but they were like, well, they chose to stay freshman team instead of going to varsity team because they wanted to play. But look what he did as a freshman. And then look what he did as a, JV player still. And then look what he did for his last 2 years of varsity. Even though it was cut short, you still have almost 4 years of tape on this one kid and how much he's grown from freshman year to senior year, even though it's cut short. So if you have that kind of the mentality in a program, it's good. But the one thing that I do say is that one kid that doesn't have that opportunity because either the coaches, just didn't really care about that, or, this kid just wasn't good, or, he wasn't good enough for college, D3, D2, D1. He didn't get to know about his final game. It just got shut. Like, that was it. Like, he played a game or was on a bench for a game, and then all of a sudden, the whole world shuts down.
Yeah.
Doesn't open back up. So this kid went home that day thinking, maybe one day I'll get my, my 5 minutes in as my last day or my last game or my last practice. And, that got cut short. So I think that is what hurts the most, of just like, obviously if everybody was made for, the pros, then there wouldn't be a pros. But, you feel bad for that, really high percentage of kids that know they're not going to college to play that sport. And they didn't get that final goodbye. Yeah.
Their last game was just kind of, exactly what you said. They didn't know it was the last game. You didn't get to treat it like the last game.
Yeah, and that goes for every level. I know we're talking soccer here, but Vince Carter deserved a way better send off.
Yeah.
Than what's happening right now. I've been a fan of his since he played for the Raptors, since he was on And One videos.
I used to have a Vince Carter jersey when I was a kid.
Yeah, his shoes were not, about it, but I'd pay $100 right now to get a Vince Carter Toronto jersey. I've put on Facebook or on Twitter that I think, the Raptors just sign him for like a 1 month deal just to get him out as a Raptor, like in his final season, since they're going to go to the playoffs and the Hawks aren't. But I think he deserves like a way better sent off than what's happening. And this is a guy who's played the sport forever, and he doesn't even get that final goodbye.
Yeah.
So it goes for, all types of levels. You just feel bad for those ones that you just know is not going to happen anymore. And it was cut short off something that we have absolutely no control over.
Yeah. Well, I saw something. It said he was the last player drafted in the 90s. So there's no more players from the 90s in the league anymore.
That's crazy to think about. And that was the era that we grew up in, and we're no longer children.
Well, I turned 30 in 3 months. So I have 3 more months of being in my 20s. I'm like, oh man.
It's a crazy feeling. To be honest, on the day that you actually turn 30, you don't really think about it, but then you just remember all these things you used to do, and you're like, wow, I can't do that anymore. Or why did I do that at that time?
Me and Chapa last night, we went to it's called the Parking Lot Social. So it's essentially like a drive-in movie theater setup, and there's a band playing, and they showing us stuff on the screen and stuff. But we had a few drinks, and I woke up this morning, I was like, oh yeah, I'm not 24, 23.
Yeah, man. I remember the days I would, have a couple and go home, and the next morning wake up and run and, get it all out. And there are now days where I have 3 beers and my head's banging, and I'm just like, you know what? I think I'm going to stay in bed today. So I feel you. And you don't feel it until it's those days where it's just like, I used to be able to do this, 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And not anymore. Your body says no more. No more.
Well, then I went to the doctor not too long ago and found out I have high cholesterol. I was like, okay, that's an old person problem. But he prescribed me medicine, and I was like, hey, I'm not going to take this right now. I think I'll try to change my diet a little bit. So I've
Yeah.
been running a lot more. I think I lost like 4 or 5 pounds just because I'm running now. But I
Yeah.
really miss sports. Like I miss volleyball. I miss basketball. They took the rim down like months ago from the local basketball hoop, and they still haven't put it back up.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, I guess I'll just run in circles for right now.
I mean, it's crazy how much sports is just in our life, and
Yeah,
the time where it's almost taken away. You're like, wait, I missed this too much, like more than I thought I would. Like it's not just watching it; it's like being able to go do it. Like I mean,
yeah,
I'm not good, and I die within the first minutes of playing, but I miss going out there, and putting on the cleats and doing all that, and
for sure.
uh, it's you miss it. And I mean, to be honest, we haven't had basketball goals in Greenspoint for a long time, so they took those down for violence, not for a pandemic. So I know that, but I mean, it'd be cool to like just go out and play soccer with some friends. But I mean, right now it is what it is, and you take a risk. So it just happens.
Uh,
You good there?
all right, I think I'm back. My
Yeah, I see
Wi-Fi is not that great. Like I remember when you were talking, you said, "Hey, John or Robert, what's something to speed up the internet?" I think I need to look into that right now
it.
because doing these phone calls, the Wi-Fi is not keeping up.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, the day we started Zoom for all our meetings was the day I was like, oh, I guess I do need faster internet now. They're pretty nice. Just
What
call
did you?
your well, first I called my internet provider, and they sped it up, but it was mostly because I just have too many. I have the security cameras, I have my iPad, I have too many things connected in
Yeah,
one home. So I had to find an extender and something else. John will know everything. He's like, that's what you need. And I was like, it's $100. He's like, that's the cheap side. I said, okay, I'm buying it. And I bought it, and he hooked it up, did it all, and I mean, he was in and out like within an hour. So I wasn't too upset about it. And I mean, it's actually tested out, pretty proven. Like every device that I hook up to and I speed test, it's pretty up to par, like of what I pay for. So I've been on the happy side of that.
nice. I think I'm gonna have to check that out. But
Yeah.
there's a part of me now because since I'm doing this, and I guess it's a podcast, but I'm not streaming the. I guess whatever. It's a podcast. I make it easier. But I was like, I always need somebody else, and I had one scheduled today at 3 with Darius, and he's been in and out. Like I think 3 times we've tried, and 3 times we haven't got together. So I was like, man, maybe I can't rely on keep doing this. But I was like, I've got a lot of feedback on that video where I was training myself. Like everyone's like, man, it was silly. And I was like, all right, you know what? I might start trying to make little skits and stuff where I can just film them and then upload them. And then that way I don't have to do any live streams. But
Yeah, yeah.
I had a lot
That
of
live
fun with
streaming
that.
stuff kills it. That's good. Yeah, man. I mean, I told a lot of my friends, I was like, I mean, this is the moment to just kind of educate yourself on stuff that
Yeah.
you've ever wanted to do or try, because it's, I mean, you ain't got nothing else to do other than sit
Yeah.
at home and watch TV. And I mean, you could kill a series pretty quickly.
Oh, for sure. You can kill you can kill Netflix if you were all about it. But
Yeah.
that's why I started editing videos. I was just like, let me see if I could do this. And I mean, I'm not great, but I was like, it's coming together.
Yeah. I mean, it didn't look, I mean, it looked a lot better than my editing skills. I'd be like,
And it's
anytime I
just,
had to do a video or photos or anything, I'm like, I'm not about it. Sorry.
but see it's just fun for me. I like doing it. So I was like, cool, maybe
Yeah.
this is something. And then somebody was telling me about Fiverr, where you're like, hey, I know how to edit videos. I'll edit your video for $5. And people send
Yeah.
it over, and you send it to them, and if it's bad, they give you a bad review, but you got paid. So you're like, yeah, don't
Yeah.
get bad reviews.
Yeah. Just do better work. Send it to the guy who's only or paying $2 for it, and you pay him the $2. You're out $2, but you got $3. You find
Yeah,
someone. You're just a middleman.
But how have you felt about the Premier League since it's been back? Are you enjoying the way it's set up? Just happy that
every
sports are
minute.
back?
Every minute I've been enjoying. I don't care who's playing. It's real weird that you asked me that because I thought to myself a couple times. I go, I watch La Liga, I watch Bundesliga, I watch, if I can catch like the Scottish league, then I do. But obviously EPL is my biggest because my team's there. But the one league where it's just ultimately decided that ended in March was the EPL. We all knew who was champion, like all of us. And I mean, we could have obviously been a United fan. I could pray that it's vacated or whatever. But I mean, it's not fair because they were running away with it. And I still found myself with greater interest into the EPL than the Bundesliga that hadn't been decided till almost 4 weeks after they restarted. So it's like there was more to see in the Bundesliga. But as soon as EPL said, all right, we're coming back this day, I was like, all right, well, throw in Bundesliga in the trash. I'm watching EPL, which, I mean, I didn't throw them in the trash, but it was just like, it should have been more exciting. It should have been as a soccer fan where you go, you have no idea if Bayern's going to make it. They were doing terrible before the restart or before everything shut down. Dortmund and Bayern Leverkusen and oh my God, they're escaping. RP Leipzig, they were doing well and they were on the rise and they were only within like 5 to 7 points, where you have this other league where the second place team is 23 points away. And yet you still find yourself being more excited to watch that league because I think they've done it right. Now Bundesliga, did make a lot of new fans. There are a lot more guys that you can hear on the radio or like talking on ESPN, like talking about, Jadon Sancho or Lewandowski or Klose or Mueller and all those, big name players. But you can still find just a random fan that'll be like, oh, I know who Wayne Rooney is. Like he played there. Or I know who I know who this guy is because he plays for an English Premier League. And that's what, the EPL has done well. They're like, okay, who's our most profitable fans? Not our home fans, America and China. Like they just get those two big superpowers and just like, we're just going to sell everything there. And I mean, you don't see a lot of Bundesliga teams coming here for tours, even though, in Texas, it's pretty big having German teams or German leagues. But I mean, I've been excited. I think there's positives to it. The players don't have to go on tour. So obviously there won't be a Man United tour in America or Australia or, Liverpool's not going to have to come here and play some game that means absolutely nothing to them in New York City or something. But I have been worried about injuries because, I mean, as you can see, they play almost, I think it's about 4 days. And, if you're a team like, Manchester City or Chelsea that are in still the FA Cup and they're still in the English Premier League trying to fight for a top spot, well, you're going to run into injuries. And I think they've done well with the substitution rule of 5 players. But I think we're going to see a lot more injuries and that's going to be normal. I mean, after 3 months of not playing and then you have to rush back in it, then it happens.
And then they're doing, is it 3 games a week, 2 or 3 games a week? Like every Wednesday and Saturday, right?
No, it's been almost every single day. It's been almost every single day. It's about yesterday there was only 1 game and today there was only 1 game, but that was just for the Premier League. There were 4 games in total for the FA Cup. And then on Friday,
so they're still, I didn't realize they were playing the FA Cup right now.
Yeah. They just got to the semifinals, so there's only 2-3 games left with the final. So it's pretty much over, but it's still there. I think it got announced Manchester City against Arsenal, Chelsea against United. So 4 big teams in the finals. And I mean, nobody. The only team that's winning the EPL is Liverpool. Obviously, they have been crowned champs today, so all the other teams are like, well, what kind of silverware can we get out of this season? And I think it's actually it has to be Chelsea or United. You know, those are the two teams that should be fighting the most for that silverware. Like obviously Arsenal, but they've kind of run into their things, and Manchester City wants to win it since they're not winning a title. But like, I think Pep Guardiola would look at that title and just be like, like another piece of silver. But I think Ole Gunnar and Frank Lampard are going to be like, we need to win this. Like, we need to get some silverware. Like, yeah, we had a up and down season, and they don't think we should be coaching these teams, but we need this silverware to show like we're not, you know, just some former players. We are good managers, and I think both of them are great managers. I just think neither of them have proved to be a manager at the top level. But you know, I don't sign the checks, so I mean, I don't get to choose who it is. I personally, if I was, you know, Manchester United's board, I would have taken Pochettino as soon as Tottenham gave him the boot. But you know, Manchester United's like, we were going to invest in this guy, and you know, you just have to deal with the years that we're not going to do so well. And it's like, okay. But I think those two teams, and it's unfortunate that they're playing each other in the semifinals, but I think those two teams right now are the most that need this trophy to just kind of assure their fans, like, hey, we're on the right, you know, path. We're doing the right thing, you know, trust in us. So that's going to be kind of the thing for the FA Cup. What happens right now, the EPL is just mostly fighting for the top spots, you know, and there's too many teams to even think about who could do it. Like it's crazy to even think, you know, if you were to ask me right now, like, hey, who's gonna be in the Champions League next year for England, I would have absolutely, I couldn't guess one. I mean, right now Manchester City is fighting a legal battle.
That's what I was gonna say. Don't they have a ban possibly?
Yeah. So I mean, it's been given out that it's a ban, but there's no, you know, they can appeal it, and obviously we've learned from soccer that if you have enough money, sometimes you can throw enough to make things disappear. So I don't know, but I mean, there's so many teams that are just like, you just have no idea who's going to show up that day and who's going to do well. When you're in the final 7 games of the season, you know, anything could happen. And I think injuries and all that can play a vital role in it. So I wouldn't know how to answer that. I mean, I know one team that I would love to be there, but that's very biased.
Well, and that's, no one's really stood out talent-wise. I've been watching the games, and Liverpool looked really good the other day.
Yeah.
But no one.
So, I mean, we could. We obviously lock one in because I think it's 4. Yeah, 4 that go. So we lock one in. So there's only 3 spots remaining. I go down the list. So Manchester City, do you think? Well, we can't count them in because we have no idea about their legal battle.
Yeah.
Leicester City is 1 point ahead of Chelsea. Chelsea is 2 points ahead of Wolverhampton Wanderers, and Manchester United is 5 points behind Chelsea, and then Tottenham's 10 points behind with 7 games left. So it's like, okay, I think Leicester City could hold on, but they haven't been good. They've tied both their games. They got knocked out of the FA Cup today by Chelsea. So do I think Chelsea's one of them? Well, they've been doing great, super great. To be honest, I think they've been pretty hot on their return, you know, beating Manchester City. But then you have Manchester United, who, to be honest, has the easiest schedule in front of them. It's a lot of teams that are struggling. And then you have, you know, the Wolves, who have been pretty hot as well. And to be honest, I have to look up who they play because can't follow everything that they do.
Their last game was against Bournemouth.
Yeah, and they won that, I believe, 1-0.
Yeah.
So they have Arsenal left. They have Sheffield.
They beat Aston Villa yesterday.
Yeah, sorry. Everton, Burnley. No, you're okay. So they've got a couple of things. They got a couple of steps. I mean, it's not top-level teams. Arsenal has been struggling other than the past 2 days. Sheffield United has been suffering. Everton is a mid-level team. Burnley's a mid-level team. Crystal Palace is a mid-level team. And then they have Chelsea at the end of it. So, I mean, it could come down to that last game. You know, if they win all their games, Chelsea win all their games, it could come down to Wolves beating Chelsea or tying, and then the other teams kind of have to scrap by. So it's a crazy question to think, like, who goes and who doesn't. But I love that. I think that's what I love the most about the EPL. It's just you have just no idea who can show up the next day and beat who. Because I mean, before we left to quarantine, Watford beat Liverpool 3-0. Like, who would have thought that? No one. No one, because Vegas had the odds on Liverpool, killing them. But
didn't Liverpool go through a little bit of a dry spell? I mean, not a dry spell. That might not be the right word. But their past few games weren't great.
Yeah,
right?
No, their past few games have not been great, and I don't know if it's obviously in your head you could think like, well, we've already got this locked up. There's no point in trying. Like, the only thing they can do right now is set history. That's it. And for an athlete, you got to find a real special place, like inside of you, to be like, I'm going to play this hard for history. And I mean, there are players like that, but now you have to say, okay, you need to find 11 players that are going to find that motivation. And that same motivation is hard to find, where the other motivation of, hey, you can beat this team who's already run away with the championship, embarrass them. Like, you can do all these. You find more people in that category than you do like, oh, we can set history. Like, yeah, that's great, but we already won the trophy. Like, that's what we really wanted. The trophy was the end game. Like, who cares how many points we win it by? Who cares how many we end up with? Like, the end game is, did we win that trophy? Yes, we did. Awesome. Nobody talks about, Golden State Warriors winning, 73 and however many games. They talk about that they lost in the finals. Like, that's one history, but
whenever the Patriots went 18-1 and the one loss was the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody cares about the 18-1 Patriots, because the New York Giants were the champions. Like, it doesn't matter how much you win by, or not how much you win by. Like, your record doesn't matter. I mean, the Houston Rockets were the champions in 93 and 94. Yeah. And I don't care if they were a 6th seed. I don't care if they were a 1st seed. Like, what I care about is, were they champions? And they were. So I think that's the hard part of just like, I know Liverpool has looked, pretty average, other than their last game. Obviously, they pummeled that other team. But when they started, it just looked average. And it just looked like, we already have this in the bag. Like, we don't really need to play this hard. So I don't know. It takes a lot of stuff for that, but I do want to congratulate them, since you're going to post this. I will congratulate them on winning. They were better than everybody, and I think they have the greatest attack. They have the greatest, defense in the Premier League. I think their midfield is above average, but money can change that, and so can trophies. So
I was just saying, this is only going to help.
Yeah. So I mean, I think when I knew when Jurgen Klopp was going to Liverpool that he could do something. Obviously, in my brain, I didn't want him to win the PL, but I saw what he did at Borussia Dortmund, and I saw what he was doing at Liverpool, and he didn't care about the questions of like, am I spending this much for a defender? Yes, and I don't care. Like, he doesn't care about that kind of stuff. Like, if he's going to bring the right team, if you got to throw money at it, you have to throw money at it, but that's not his problem. His problem is like, I've got to find the right stuff for the field. And he did. He found it, and they're on a record pace of the most points, most goals. Like they've got a lot of things going for them right now, and I don't think this is the end of it. To be honest, I do believe they can challenge, retain it next year, and I do believe that they can challenge for it for the next 4 years. So it sucks to say that, but that's where we are. It happens.
Well, and then, like you're saying, I mean, it's a good team that's put together. There's a lot of pieces that are going to be there for a little while too.
Yeah. I mean, if you don't sign your contract, it's that's on you. I mean, if you don't want to be a part of that, maybe the city is not great. I don't know. You could always find ways to not have to live in that city. So I don't know what it would be to not want to train or sign for that team. It's pretty hard. And that's what a lot of teams start running into. You can't just throw cash anymore, to bring a player in. You need to show that you can win trophies. And, the players can always say like, oh, it was my dream to do this. Like, no Manchester City, player would say it was my dream to play for Manchester City when I was a kid. Like, no kid said Manchester City was nothing in 2000 or the 90s. No, I'm sorry, like, it's not true. But if you come out and say, I want to play for Pep Guardiola and I want to win championships with him, then I truly believe you. Like, he's done, he's won the La Liga, he's won the Bundesliga, and he's won the Premier League. Like, he won the Champions League with the other two teams, not yet with Man City, but you go for the championships, and if that player or if that coach wants you and thinks you fit a part of his scheme, that sometimes loyalty's out the window, and you got to do what you got to do, like to get that piece of prize. Because I mean, it's not just one with the coaches, because you have 38 excruciating games that you have to go through, and like I said, the thing that makes the EPL fun is that you could have Derby County come in one day in the FA Cup, and your coach puts out a mediocre lineup, and all of a sudden Derby County's up on you 3-0. And these are guys that they're obviously Derby County has a lot of history and stuff like that, but they're not in the Premier League right now. They're in the second division, and yet you're losing 3-0 to them. So that's what I love about the English game, that there's a lot of talent in that, in just that entire system. That's why I would love for the under leagues to come to America. I think football would do fantastic with that. Like, if you can fill up a high school stadium for a high school football team, there's no way you could tell me that you can't do a semi-pro football team for the pro team. Like, those practice guys go out and play against other practice guys, and it's a league. I don't understand how that can't be exciting. Like,
Well, that was kind of the XFL. I mean, I know that wasn't the point of the XFL, but for the 4 games that it lasted, it seemed like it was going in that direction. And I was talking to Brian last week. He was saying that it was a more fun game. And I agree with him. A few of those rule changes made it a little faster. It played a lot like college, in my opinion. Kind of the speed of the game, but it was never going to rival the NFL. But it would be cool. Like, hey, the Browns haven't done too much, but they got a lot better. But hey, what if we drop the Browns down or like baseball?
I mean, you don't even.
AAA. All right.
And I think no, I'm just saying, like, I totally agree with you. I think it's a great idea to bring here, because I mean, the number one thing that teams want and that we're learning about right now is money. So like, how could that not bring you more money and not waste so much, where you have, let's say, the Browns are the worst team and, the Houston Roughnecks are the first team. Obviously, you'd run into confusion of, there's two Houston teams now if somehow they moved up. But let's just say, you know what, we're going to put them in a head-to-head battle. We just want to see. Like, it doesn't work that much for college because I just don't think that college, all 52 guys on the roster are mentally and physically ready to play in the NFL. Not all of them.
For sure.
There's a good percentage that could, but not all of them. But if you take a semi-pro team where there's XFL guys or ex-NFL guys, and then there's college players that have now aged that want to get back into it, and they play against a pro team, like, there's no embarrassment of that. Like, these coaches are not some guys who, just play flag football. No, these were coaches at universities or coaches at D2 schools that know the sport. They're just not, Belichick or something. Like, it's just another coach. So, I mean, I think, basketball to me has been the one that's come closest to it. Not really regulation and stuff like that, but where they'll just be like, you need development, go to the G League. Like, here's this so that you're not wasting minutes on the bench. But, it'd be nice to, have the lowest team in the East play or, their G League, to see, like, you know what, this team's actually better than that one. Like, let's get these guys onto the court out here. So that's coming back to EPL, that's what I've always loved. I mean, you have teams that play almost in a middle school stadium and they're a part of the FA Cup. And, MLS has it with the Open Cup and it's not as popular as EPL, but I love that. I think, playing the Dynamo playing the Austin Bulls or playing the San Antonio Scorpions or just those smaller teams that could maybe one day have a chance to go pro. I think it's great. And all these I mean, Leicester City and on our generation has been that team where
I was gonna bring them up.
I think third level all the way up to Premier League now and won it. So I mean, it's not anything that's beyond the case. It's not highly probable, but it's happened. So I think that's one of the things that has just been great about the sport coming back and just that we have like in front of us.
And with the MLS, do they have plans, like a restart plan that they're putting together?
So they're I don't know the exact date in my head, but they basically said, you know what, let's take all these teams that we have, let's make a World Cup format. So I do love that part where they're saying we're gonna get all our teams, put them in groups, and we're just gonna make
I did see that.
Yeah, so they're starting. So the only thing that I'm afraid of is where they're doing it, and this goes for MLS and basketball. It's in Orlando, and COVID cases are on the rise, and like Universal Studios is opening back up, so that means it's probably going to get worse. And you're talking about having grown athletes having to basically dedicate the next month and a half to just the sport.
Yeah.
And that is pretty close to impossible. So I don't know. Obviously, COVID cases in our case rose out of nowhere, and shut us down in the matter of 2 weeks or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So maybe things can happen where it kind of normalizes out back to, normal. But I don't know. I'm excited to see it, but I don't know if it's going to happen. I think around the world, they figured it out. We need to do this as fast as possible. If we're going to do it, we have to do it as fast as possible.
Well, that's essentially that's why the EPL is playing the way they are, right? Is they're like, hey, if the world shuts down again, we want to be as close to done as we possibly can. And while we have a window, let's go get it solved, get it figured out.
Yeah, and you know, obviously their cases happen differently than us. We're just running into the issue of just like we all thought, okay, New York, Seattle, and California have it bad. Well, we don't, so we're fine. Like Florida was fine, Texas was fine, Arizona, all these other states were like, oh, we're good. And then when it started declining for them, we're like, oh, let's just open back up. We're fine. Nothing happened here while they were all in trouble. And then trouble happened. And New York's like, we've already gone through this. We don't want it to happen again, but we've kind of already gone through this. California never really got over it. So they're just going back to where they started, and other new places are just running into it. So it's like, maybe we, our peak line. The thing is that we're just all about deadlines. And it's like, this virus is like, I'm a virus. I'm not a human being. So, sorry.
I don't care about your deadlines.
Sorry not to have the same plans as you, but this is what I'm for, to virally infect you. So, like, it's just hard. Like, I understand some people where they're just like, I just want to go back to work. And it's like, your work wants you to come back to work too. It's, everybody wants to go back to normal, but that's just not normal right now. We can't have that. Like, you feel bad for all the other things. But yeah, that's off topic. But MLS, I think, is exciting that it's going to come back. I think Dynamo got into the death group. So
I saw that one. Isn't it? Is it the Red Bulls, or no, New York FC?
No.
Or LAFC?
Yes, we got LAFC.
Okay. Well, that's my caveat last week was I'm not an expert in anything, so I just keep proving it.
No, you're good. You're good. You got Los Angeles, but we got both Los Angeles, and we got Portland.
Yeah, okay.
So, and I mean, if you look at our schedule before that, we tied LA, which was good, and then we lost 4-0 to Sporting. So, Sporting is prior to when we were supposed to play, or before all this happening. Sporting was not very good, and LAFC was very good. So if Sporting beat us 4-0, using the transitive property, LA is probably going to put a smacking on us unless something, changed, which would be great. Portland, I don't really know much about them, who's still playing. Another thing is, like, it could be like the NBA, where NBA is basically just going to be like, if you test positive for COVID, you're getting sent home, go quarantine, or you're in quarantine. If nobody else on your team is sick, well, we're still going to play. So MLS could probably do the same, where, Carlos Vela could get COVID and have to sit out for 2 games or, a month, and that's their best player. So they have nobody to score goals for them, or a vital key of their team. And the Dynamo surprise them because they have all their players and they're all healthy. So, this restart, it shouldn't have an asterisk to it. To me, I think if you win a championship, you won a championship. It doesn't matter what happened that year. That's not my problem. If I'm the championship team, that's not my problem. Even if it's a championship team I don't want to win, it's still, that's not their problem. Like, they didn't ask for COVID to do this. They didn't ask for any of this. So there is no asterisk. If you ask me who's the champion of the MLS this year, and this team was a champion, that team was a champion. Did they probably deserve it? No. But I also don't know the future. So, there are teams that have never, deserved it, or never should deserve it, but they, it happens. So MLS will be a toss-up for me. There may be players who decide to sit out. There may be players who decide to, they don't think the risk is, for the reward. And that's good for players who are sitting on the bench and are like, I want to play. And if that guy sits out, I will play. I'll go out there. I don't have a family. I'm 22. Like, I just live by myself in a bachelor pad trying to get recognition, and this can be my time. So I think that's huge for MLS, where we may see a lot of bench players more than expected due to, you know,
they're going to get a lot more minutes, a lot more exposure.
Yeah. I mean, the guy who, I mean, even if the guy is a family man, the guy who only makes $80,000 a year has to choose between playing this tournament where he could get COVID or not get paid, and he's got his kid and wife. He's going to play. Like, he's going to have to risk it. Where the guy who makes, $2 million this year, and, Chicharito, he played for Real Madrid, he's played for Manchester United, and it's made all this money. Well, he could be like, you know what, this isn't worth the risk. I'm not going to play. So that guy's going to step up, play for the 80,000, and we'll see how he does. And it might not be quality, but I mean, soccer. We never base it off that. We always compare, but I mean, I always tell people, I go, you can't ask me to compare a league that's been around for hundreds of years or 100 years to a league that started in my lifetime. So you're never going to have the same brand. I think social media helps, because I think there are fans of the Dynamo in other countries, but it's not as big. When you're asking for TV names, you're asking for all these things. You could ask a person who doesn't watch soccer at all, and they know who Cristiano Ronaldo is, but you ask them about Brian Ching, and they're like, sorry, I live in New York. I have no idea who that is. And, he's a big player to us, and he's done a lot of good things and won championships. So it's just where the history of a league is gonna outweigh the other history. So, but I'm still excited. I obviously, with sports with me, I really don't care. I mean, I watched the Bundesliga. I watched NASCAR, which I haven't watched in a while. I watched UFC, which I kind of swore off that for a while, but I've kind
of become a really big UFC fan, especially through this. But lately, it used to, I don't want to say bother me, but watching people get punched in the face isn't my favorite thing to watch. But I'm starting to get more into the sport of it as opposed to just fighting. And there's a couple fighters out there that are amazing fighters. And like Justin Gaethje, who just beat Tony Ferguson, that was an awesome fight. Like, I know it's with sports being basically stopped, that was a hell of a fight to have on TV.
And I think they had it right, where they're just like, you know what, we don't care too much about the money right now. Like, we have money and we're not worried about it. We know this may be just a 1-year thing.
Yeah.
Let's just make it free, or let's make it cheaper. Like, hey, we're still going to have fights. Hey, you can watch 9 fights on the ESPN channel or the ESPN app. And these aren't a bunch of nobodies. Like, these are people who have had, professional fights behind them. It's just they're, the undercards. They're the number 12 in the world against the number 5 or something. Like, we only know about the number 1 guy who's holding the title, mostly. I go, but I mean, you don't need to pump crowd noise into it, because you hear the excitement from the commentators, which I used to hate Michael Bisping, but as a commentator, I do love hearing him talk about fights. And, you hear the other corners, you hear all the corners, honestly. And I mean, I watched last night, most of the fights, not all of them, but I watched most of them. And I'm like, there's no way these guys get out of the second round. Like, they're beating the hell out of each other. And they made it all the way to round 5. And I'm like, this was like the most exciting fight I've seen in a while. And I mean, I watched other ones, and I think one of the greatest things they've done is marketed, their female athletes. They've blown up their female athletes.
A big push, especially during this time. But they've got some amazing fighters. There's some really good female fighters now.
Yeah, no, and that's where I kind of, when it first happened, I was just like, this is only going to be like a two name thing, but you realize in the sport, anything could happen. Like, this girl could come off the streets and maybe only have 8 years of jiu-jitsu, while the other girl's been having like 20 years of jiu-jitsu, but still go in there and just catch her jaw in the right place and knock her down, and she's now the champion, or she's now a contender. And it's like, that, I mean, it goes so fast. I mean, there are fighters now that 5 years ago are no longer fighting. So it's a sport that just can continue, and you're finding a lot of athletes going, hey, maybe I'm not good at this sport, where a small percentage can be a small percentage can be the best, and I could train and do this, and I have the money for it, and I can do this and be a fighter, and yeah, maybe I never become a champion, but I can make money, and I love fighting, so I love the high of it, and they got out and do it, and I think that's great. Like, you have so many multiple divisions. I find it way more enjoyable than boxing. Boxing has died for me, and I'll never.
They've been pushing boxing a lot lately. Like ESPN has 2 or 3 matches a week. It seems like.
Yeah,
there's nothing else going on, but they're really pushing those smaller fighters.
They're trying to bring it back, and I mean, ESPN got into those deals of it, and I think it's, if you're in a gambling side of it, it's like, okay, well, boxing used to be the greatest thing in the world.
Yeah.
And now it's almost shunned, and ESPN's like, well, we have UFC already in our contract. Let's buy boxing too. Like, HBO doesn't want them anymore because nobody wants to buy HBO. Well, let's buy them. Let's show random fights that are happening across the world, and people feed into it because they're still loyal boxing fans. So they'll be like, oh, I can turn on ESPN and I don't have to pay this extra channel. So I think if it was me on a gambling side, like, would I have bought boxing on its lowest? Yeah. Because, I mean, if it turns out to one day come back, or you have a fighter that's just, and nothing against, Triple G or the other fighters. It's just that there have been so many fights that it's just like already past its prime that they try and bring back. And it's like, I don't want to watch that. I don't care about that at all. Like, I watched the Conor McGregor Mayweather, but at a bar. I didn't pay for my own house.
Well, I think that was just I don't want to say a silly fight, but kind of like almost a circus, where it was more about the spectacle than actual boxing. But the Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder fights, this last one was a little lackluster, but that first fight was amazing.
Yeah, and I forgot that British guy, and then the real big Mexican guy.
Yeah, it's Anthony Joshua is the British guy, and I can't remember.
But that was a great fight to me, and they wanted to do a second one, but it's like that's what you kind of see in boxing, where it's just like sometimes that lightning in the bottle is only one time, like one fight. You don't have to bring it back for a third one. Like there's no reason that guy should fight Anthony Joshua again. Like he got him in the first fight. I think he lost in the second fight, or they signed up for a second fight. I don't remember if they even had the second fight. But
I don't think they fought again. It's Andy Ruiz is his name. But after he beat Joshua the first time, it seemed like he just went and partied. He spent money. He didn't take it serious, and then his next fight after that, where he defended the belt, I think he got knocked out, if I'm not mistaken, but he definitely lost and didn't look anywhere near as good as he did against Joshua.
Yeah. And like I said, it's a lightning in the bottle thing. So that's where it's just kind of died for me. That it's just that there's not enough fighters for you to do that.
Yeah,
it's just not. And if you space it out so much, and I get it, like traveling and all these other things you got to do for it, but it's like, if I've got to wait almost 8 months for another fight, I'm gonna get disinterested. Where I could watch 2 seasons of a team or 2 seasons of 2 clubs that I could watch, on a weekly basis. So, and I get it that, back in the day, that's how it was. People waited. Like, they're like, oh, this boxing match is happening in 9 months. All right, I'm ready for it. I'm waiting. And I mean, but that's our life now. We don't wait so much for movies anymore. Like, I think Avengers was the last movie that could do that to a fan base, or Star Wars.
Well, I think we're seeing that now, where everyone is releasing their movies on streaming services because they're like, hey, we can't hold on to them. People aren't willing to wait. We have to keep our name out there. So a lot of stuff is getting released.
And I mean, it's just we're in a time of just like impatient people. Like, we just want everything We want everything done now. We want everything like made for us now, and people can cater to it, and some people can't. So, and I think boxing can't cater to that. They can't cater to the now.
Yeah. Another big thing though is in boxing, there's a bunch of different promotions, whereas like with mixed martial arts, UFC is the promoter, and like all of their fighters underneath. So all they say is, "All right, you're fighting you." Boom. All right, now it's happening. Whereas Canelo has his brand, Triple G has his brand, and now they have to find, hey, we want to fight for this much. Oh, well, I want this much, and that's where all the arguments lie. Whereas UFC is, hey, y'all are under contract. Here's your money. Here's your money. Let's go. And they're a lot better at putting fighters together, especially during their or like when it's fun to watch. Because I remember like Mayweather Pacquiao, that was a huge fight. They got hyped up for almost 10 years, and they finally fought. And you're like, all right, they're both kind of past their prime now.
Yeah, it was like you were watching two older fighters for $95 on pay-per-view. I remember. Yeah. I mean, I remember throwing $20 to help pay it, and I still felt like ripped off. So it's like it's a sport that's hard to cater.
I was gonna say, speaking of older fighters, you heard Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield are in talks for a rematch.
And I think that would be great to put on like network TV, not on pay-per-view. Like, I mean, if these two older guys want to come out and fight, I mean, you couldn't pay me $500,000 to step into a ring with either of them, because I mean, they're still boxers. Like, they know how to hit. So I mean, it'd be pretty tough to convince me to get in a ring with them, even at their age. But I don't think that's what should excite us. Like, two names that are beyond their prime. That's why, like, when MJ played Kobe, like, it didn't hype me up that much, because it was just like, MJ is way past his prime.
Yeah.
Like, can he still play basketball? Yeah, but it would be awesome to have seen Kobe in his prime against MJ in his prime, but that doesn't happen all the time. Like, it's just not, physically possible. So it excites me. Of like, I'll watch it if it's on TV, but if you ask me to pay $100 for it, probably not going to do it. Probably not going to pay that. But I mean, I'm just happy some sports are back. It's been great.
Well, I've been following NBA a lot, because I don't know why, but this year I've got really into basketball, and I was super excited about the playoffs because all the teams were looking good, and then once COVID hit, you're like, all right, well, basketball might not happen. So now I'm excited again, but it's kind of like you were saying, I think when we're talking MLS, how some teams can slip in that maybe shouldn't have, or there may be an asterisk. But I know a lot of people have been talking about how the Pelicans have a pretty easy schedule, and they might get a chance to slip in. So people are upset about that. But I think it's been a good layoff for, like, the Lakers. I think are going to be great because LeBron James got to rest. Anthony Davis has got to rest. I saw Harden lost a lot of weight. There's a few players that have dropped a bunch of weight. So I think it's going to be exciting. But like you said, there shouldn't be an asterisk, but I think everyone's going to kind of look at it sideways a little bit.
The asterisk held by the people who don't want you to win. So who cares? Like, I mean, if they hand out the same trophy, I don't care. It's a championship for your team. Now, I mean, because nobody tells the Spurs that they have an asterisk, other than people who hate the Spurs. When they had the lockouts and everything, and then they came back and just played an 82-game season with playoffs. Nobody was like, "Oh, that's an asterisk." Like, y'all locked out, and then that gave time for the Spurs to heal up or be ready, and they won. It's like, they won the NBA championship. Yeah, okay, so they're the champions. Like, that's just what happens. And I mean, to me, it's people who just don't want that team to win. They'll be like, it's an asterisk, or it's a good selling point on media where it's just like, how can we get people to talk about this? Okay, well, let's say this guy thinks it's an asterisk. Like, let's make blah 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 say on the radio, well, I think it's an asterisk, and then people are just going to blow up from there, because you're going to have those fans, other fans. I mean, I didn't give into the hype of the Astros asterisk thing. I'm like, well, from what I've learned about baseball, there's a lot of cheating.
Yeah.
Like from when I was little to now, I've learned that there's a lot of cheating in baseball. You know, steroids was not something that just magically happened those 5 years. No,
Right.
when steroids were introduced, steroids were everywhere. So,
What? And I think they should put Barry Bonds in the Hall of Fame. And I get it. I mean, he's got a lot of negativity attached to him. But 72 home runs, I mean, no one's ever come close. So yes, steroids help, but also, I mean, he was a phenomenal player before. So
I mean,
like
the
you
thing
said,
is, baseball made so much money off of the steroid use.
oh yeah.
So much money. So much money. So it's like, if you're going to keep this guy out of it, and yet you still kind of want to like say, oh, Barry Bonds is a part of the MLB, or yeah, he was part of the family. Okay, well then he deserves to be in there. He deserves to be in there. Like, do I like what he did? No, because you know that's kind of wrong. But it's that's like telling me Michael Vick shouldn't be in the Football Hall of Fame. Like, he was a great athlete. He did football right. He knew how to play it. Did he win a championship? No, but he was a great player. What he did outside of football, I'm not saying he should be in the human rights or animal rights Hall of Fame, but I think he should be in the NFL Hall of Fame. I think Barry Bonds should be in it. I think Pete Rose should be in it. He was a great football or baseball coach. He was great. I mean, did he gamble? Yeah. But I mean, the only thing that hurts him is that he gambled on his own team. So, like, that's the one thing where I say, okay, maybe Pete Rose doesn't have an argument, but it's like, he was still a great coach. Like, he knew baseball. Now, if he was gambling other sports, I wouldn't care. I'd be like, dude, just get him in. Like, he did absolutely nothing to baseball, but he does have an argument where it's hard to accept him. But Barry Bonds, you're right. Like, 72 home runs, even with steroids. The other guys who complain are mostly the other guys who use steroids but couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Like Jose Canseco.
He used steroids but only hit 30 home runs.
Yeah. Like, sorry, bro. Like, you can't be – not everybody can be the greatest at it. So, yeah, he got there mostly with steroids, but he was going to be great even without it. Like, I mean, I can't prove it, but I think Barry Bonds is going to be a great player without steroids. But who knows?
Well, he was a great player even before that, because, I mean, when he was on the Pirates, he was phenomenal. And then once he got to the Giants, he gained like 40 pounds. And everyone's like, okay.
I mean, I don't know. Like I said, he deserves to be in the Hall of Fame. Do I think he's like should be an advocate against, cheating? No. Like, he should not be talking to your players about why anabolic steroids are bad for you. Like, he should be just in the Hall of Fame, and that's it. I don't think you should introduce him into it, like your baseball team.
Is steroid use something that happens in soccer? I mean, not ever, but like, has it ever been an issue? Because I've never followed it that close, but
I think doping wise, kind of like the blood doping.
Yeah.
A lot of cyclists get into trouble with that. I think Lance Armstrong got in trouble with that. I think that's a big thing in it. Obviously, steroids of the sense of like how baseball and football use it, it could be a thing, but I don't see it as like a major factor. I mean, they get drug tested. Every athlete gets drug tested, but I don't see it as such a big thing in soccer. I don't really. I think blood doping mostly, but I mean, you play so many places, you have no idea what they're against. I mean, I was playing in the Chinese league and they're letting me, blood dope. I wouldn't care. It makes me as a better athlete. It doesn't affect me negatively that we know of. So yeah, I'm gonna do it. But I mean, in the Premier League, they probably watch that a lot, and I think mostly they look at it is cocaine use and things like that. Because the party life and things that can happen. But I to be honest, in that thing, in the steroids, like anabolic steroids, I don't know much. I haven't heard that much cases of like soccer players running into that issue. But who knows? Maybe they mask it pretty well. Like they just don't say anything.
Well, it's all in my head. I don't know how true it is, but I feel like there's just some monsters in the NFL. And, every now and then people get popped, but it's like there's got to be more use than we're aware of. And like I said, it's all in my head. It's just speculation. But what some of those guys can do, and I mean, there's just monsters on this planet, people with amazing God-given abilities. But some of those guys, I look at them and you're like, okay. But to be fair, in the UFC, you've got people like Yoel Romero, who is insane, who gets very strictly tested and hasn't failed yet. So I think there's just monsters on this, or not even maybe, there's just monsters on this planet.
Yeah. I mean, it's just like some sports are just so. I mean, even football, it's just a cognitive sport, mostly, to where it's just like there may be some people that just live like a half a second ahead of you. They just know what you're gonna do, or just cognitively they understand the human mindset and can play better. And I think that's just where like some of these athletes, they go through. Like, they're given these natural abilities, but LeBron James and Chris Paul's intellect towards the game is also high. There are football players that intellect is extremely high. Now, it's not going to be at accounting, but do they understand that sport that they're playing? They do. And they know everything about it. And they know what you're going to do with how you're setting up. And they know what to do next. And they know how to make you move the way they want you to move. So it's like, and I mean, I could throw Harden in there not being biased, but I mean, he understands that there are rules, and he understands you can play on that fine line of breaking the rules, and that's what he does. And I know that people hate it. As a fan of his, I love it. Yeah. If I was on the other side of it, I would hate it. But he just understands. He's like, I have a high percentage of getting fouled if I drive it to the hole, and if I move my body this way. So I'm going to continue to do that. And he does it. And, you could say his 30 points are 15 free throws, but that doesn't matter to him. He's like, they're points. I still have to make free throws. So there's just athletes that I think just in their brain understand that sport so much that they can just do it. Like, not even just being explosive, like, a defensive end or outside rusher. Like, they just understand that, I can beat this guy, but how am I going to beat him 5 years later? Like, when I've slowed down, or when I lose this, or if I get injured. Yeah. So then they start training their bodies to do different things and still get that sack. Not in high percentages, but still be able to get that sack. And I think that just athletes in themselves that invest into like just like their brain and their body have been, players that just exceed their lifetime. Like, to me, David Beckham should have not played that long for high teams, and yet he did. So what he did was just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I'm not making those 40-yard, runs anymore. But how can I adjust my game to where I'm still an asset to this team? And I mean,
I felt that way. Like, Ibrahimovic was someone who he lost a step, but he was always a step ahead still at times.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I think that he could have still played for United without the injury, or with the injury. I think he could have stayed there. What he did at MLS is just crazy, because you almost looked at him and it didn't look like he broke a sweat. It was just like a training ground for him. And that's what I try and get people to understand. It's like, it's not that you guys suck. It's that this guy has been trained with like the top mind, and his mind is about this sport for all his life. Like all his life he's done this, where we have athletes that are not they're athletes, our own athletes that play since youth, and then, move on or whatever. But there's some that it's just like, okay, I get into it in high school, and then I get into the D2 school or D1 school, and then I play for an MLS club, and then that's it. But I never had like top coaching or anything like that, where these other kids have had this top coaches that have trained them in academies for most of their life, and they're trained not to make your own decision. Not where it's like our American sports, where it's like the coach is instructing you most of the time. Like, obviously the athlete still needs to execute it, but the coach is telling what to do. In soccer, you don't hear the coaches saying too much. They can't really, because there's 100,000 people around the crowd. Yeah. They can't yell all these instructions the whole time. Yeah, they might say some things or yell at the ref, but it's like they don't have the ability. They don't have, a headset where it's going into someone's ear, or, they're on the court. So, it's right there, or a timeout where everybody can meet. Like, everything we did on the practice ground, I expect to see it out here, and let's see what happens. And then we have halftime, and then we have the game, and then it's over. And it's like, all right, let's talk about what we did wrong, what we did right, and what we can do next week. So it's like, it's a sport, and that's where, like, Christian Pulisic, he can be the greatest American player, but I don't know if he has the talent around him to have the best team, because the other guys aren't playing where he plays or playing at very high levels. There are more now that are playing.
Are you talking about like on the national level?
Yeah, like I would love for this to be the greatest American team, because I think Christian Pulisic is different than Landon Donovan and Clint Dempsey. I think he's better.
Yeah.
But I don't think the talent that Christian Pulisic has around him is as good as what Dempsey and Landon Donovan had, because Donovan had a great goalkeeper. He had great defenders. He had great attackers, and he was in the midfield. Christian Pulisic has these guys that are young, and he's young, but he, I think, has been like, he understands the game a lot better than what Langdon Donovan and Dempsey did. Not taking any credit away from those two guys, but I think Christian Pulisic is one of the best players we've had coming out of America. But I don't know if he can make this the greatest American team. I think 2010 was the last time we had the greatest American team, or either 2006 or 2010, one of those two. I'm trying to remember exactly, but those were that was the greatest team that we had. And now we just have to make sure we can have people around Christian Pulisic, because he can't do everything by himself. It's not a sport that you can do that.
Yeah. Well, what's a way, I guess, that would start to kind of help the U.S. be better on the national stage? Like, I was talking to someone not too long ago, and they said that Iceland has come up because about 20 years ago or so, I don't know the exact timeline, but they started building a lot of indoor stadiums and really focusing on like youth. So now these are kids who've been playing essentially at a national level since they were kids. So Iceland has become, I mean, I don't want to say a powerhouse, that might be extreme, but they're much better than they have been in the past.
And I think
like the U.S. is kind of tailing off at times.
That's what we run into as just a youth. It's investing in youth, and we don't have the resources for it. This COVID has killed off a lot of things. I don't know if it's for the good or the bad. Having your football coach as your soccer coach is not the right thing in the world for high school. But there are a lot of programs that are starting to change that way, where they're like, you know what, maybe we do need a person as just like the soccer person, or the coach, and leave the football guy with football and the soccer coach with soccer, because it doesn't mix well if I go to football either. Like, it doesn't make any sense for me to go to that training either. But it's where, and it's not just that, it's where a coach has to start learning, if we can't make intelligent players, or if we can't share our knowledge to make us better, all of us, our region better, we're never going to grow as a United States program.
Yeah.
And there are so many coaches that are not willing to do that. They don't want to go learn new stuff. They're like, I've been doing this. I've won state or I've won the championship. And they think that's it. And the hard part is, and I'll tell you this, like, honestly, Jacob, I've watched some games, some high school games, and it's not the fact of this team is better than this team. It's that this team has a faster player or this team has a height advantage. And then the other team that is actually trying to play soccer the correct way, passing, moving, adjusting, supporting, all those things, then has to transform their whole dynamic of like, okay, this team is just booting the ball and they're winning it every time because they have the fastest player on the field and we don't. So now we have to conform to that. So instead of two teams playing the sport correctly, we have one team playing catch up or, kick the ball and find it. And then the other team having to do the same thing just to even compete in the game. And I'm like, that is the ugliest way to play. Like, I don't want my defenders. I had a goalkeeper come up to me Friday. And he goes, Coach, I don't know why I'm doing these skill drills. Like with my feet, I'm the goalie. And I go, you know what? You're right. I go, all you do is catch the ball, right? And he's like, well, yeah, mostly I can use my hands. And I go, well, what if your defender ever passes it back to you? Oh, no, they never do that. They just boot it up forward. I go, always? He goes, most of the times, either that or out. And I'm like, wouldn't you think that it's beneficial for them to sometimes pass it back to you so that you guys don't lose possession? I was like, because are you being pressured at the moment? No. He's being pressured, and then I could be pressured. I go, okay, but you're not being pressured at that moment. Like, there's not somebody standing in front of you where you're not a good idea to pass to. Yeah. He goes, no. And I go, so you should be an option to pass to. Well, yeah. Okay, so make yourself an option to be passed to. So we've had so many years of where it's just like, oh, no, the goalie just boots the ball, or the defender just this, like, sweeper keeper, like, just boot the ball and see what happens. Where if you train an athlete to be intelligent, to be like, look, you have 3 options here, and then like a final option to have to boot it out. But you have so many more options where you could move the ball, keep possession, and still attack the other team and get it out of your side without having to kick the ball far and hope that your player reaches it.
Yeah. Well, I still remember growing up, like when you're young, the goalie was always the least athletic. You're like, just put him in the goal so he doesn't have to move around. But now, like, as an adult, I mean, playing club at U of H or even just hanging out with them, you're like, hey, the keeper needs to be one of the most athletic people on the field.
Yeah. And it's just all of them. I told, I had a couple players, same thing. When they come up to me and they're like, what position should I play? I'm like, wow, you should play whatever position you play comfortable with. I go, but you should always be ready if you have to play another position. Yeah. I go, you should never hold yourself back to where you can play. Ever. I go, don't ever make that mistake of going, I'm only a left wing. That's it. Like, you've got to learn to be a defender. You have to learn to attack the ball. You have to learn to move your body in sorts of ways that defenders do, even though you're a striker. Like, you have to do these things. Now, you may not be the best, defender or left back or anything like that, but you're an option in case of things. Or I go, and this could happen to you at any time in your life where your coach goes, there's a guy ahead of you, and the only position I have is left back. And in your head, you go, I still want to play. Well, there's 2 things you could do. Sacrifice and say, suck it up, I'm going to play left back, or quit, and he'll find someone else to play that position. Yeah. So you've got to be ready for those instances, because I go, it's never going to be where you're forever going to be that position. There are some players that it happens. Yeah, that's great, but not everybody. There are players that, may start in, a middle attacker and, fall off. They've lost a step or 2 and have to drop back as defensive midfielder. They could still distribute the ball, but they're not attacking that much. They're older, or they've lost a step, or an injury holds them back. So it's like, I go, MVP for me is like, you have to be a versatile player. Yeah. If you're not versatile, it's hard for me to want you to be on the team. Like if you tell me you only play striker and that's it, and then when I put you as a defender, you are not even giving it your best because you go, this isn't worth it. Well, then you know what? You're not worth playing. Like you're not a player. You're just a striker. Like you're not a part of the team. You're just this. And yeah, there's some of you that do that great, but not all of you. So it's a mentality.
I was talking to a buddy the other day, and I mean, I don't know if you'd agree with this or not, but he's kind of saying how soccer is almost a positionless sport where, I mean, even if you're a striker, once you lose position, now you're a defender. There's defenders who push forward all the time. As a midfielder, you've got to be able to do everything. So it's a sport where, yes, you start in a position, but there's almost no one who's a true, like, hey, I only do this. At least not at the top levels.
Yeah, no, and that's completely true. Where it's just like if you're defending a corner, you don't just say, "Oh yeah, I'm the forward. I don't have to defend the corner." When there's a defender running in to try and hit, trying to get the goal too. So it's like, oh wait, I do have to be a defender. So yeah, you need to learn how to defend corners. Yeah, you need to learn how to try and win the ball back because it'd be, in a situation of if I ask you, hey, would you rather win the ball back in your half or their half? You're always going to say, oh, I want to win the ball in their half. Okay, well, that starts with you. If you're my forward, that starts with you. If you lose the ball, you've got to be the first one to respond to try and win that ball back. So it's a mentality thing. And like I said, that until the United States has an identity of what they want to do, that's when we'll at least have the ball rolling. But right now we don't have that. And we had it with Jurgen Klinsmann. I thought that was the greatest choice we could do because he turned Germany around. Like he was a part of that whole German revolution. Yeah. And I think what he ran into was bureaucracy, which that's the United States. And he ran into people that don't want to get out of their old ways. And we just couldn't do it.
Do you think it'll ever change, or are we just going to be mediocre into perpetuity?
I think we'll always see athletes that come in. Like I said, Christian Pulisic is one of the greatest athletes the United States has seen in soccer. I don't want to say it and somebody quote me like 20 years down the road, but I do think that it's like he came at the wrong time. I would have loved to seen him in 2006 and 2010. I think they would have done phenomenal with players like that.
Yeah.
But I think what the U.S. has right now is a missing identity of what they want to be, and I don't think they'll do well. I don't even know. I don't know if they'll make it to the next World Cup. So I mean that could be their mission, but if your mission is just to get in it and then just losing it, then there's no point of going. And that's what I see from them. I see them struggling against teams they shouldn't struggle against. And it's because those teams have a program. They know what they want to do. They have an identity. And the United States does not have that. They don't have an identity. And I mean, I've had so many people tell me, well, it's because, we're such a big country. And it's like, that shouldn't matter. It's not about how big we are or how many cultures we have. I go, the problem is that we don't have, facilities. I go, the thing that we're so behind than other sports that money can't buy is that they've got their facilities for their players already done. And they have their coaches who have their philosophy. And even though there's obviously hundreds of coaches in the NBA, they still have an identity of like, this is how the United States plays. That's why we win gold in basketball. That's why we would win gold if it was if football was an Olympic sport, we would win gold in that. Yeah. Now, baseball, I think there's just other players that are athletically better in other countries. But I think we have the idea of how we want to play baseball, so I think that's why they're decent. But for the United States,
I think baseball on the world stage, baseball is just a competitive sport. Like other countries are as good.
Yeah.
But, I mean, we compete.
Yeah.
Whereas with soccer, we almost don't anymore.
Yeah, and it's because we just don't have an identity of it. We don't have a philosophy. We don't have a methodology. We just have a coach and then a bunch of bureaucracy of just money. It's honestly just money.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, the United States women they're good. They're great. They're a great women's team, but it's because other teams haven't caught up. But when those other teams start investing in it, France, Germany, Japan, which they've already done, all those other teams that are just starting to put money into their women's league, like Colombian, Ecuadorian, Brazilian women's, which has done pretty well, Argentinian women, they're going to start seeing competition. And I'm not saying their reign is over. Like, obviously, winning 4 championships is great, but I think them trying to win their 5th or even 6th one in the future is going to be really hard for them. They're going to see that other countries have stepped it up, and they're implementing their men's philosophy and methodology into the same thing. And they're like, holy crap, how are we going to compete against this? Like, they're passing the ball around us. Like, they're moving the ball everywhere, and we have no idea what to do. Like, oh, it's not just this, like, kick far. We have the fastest girl. And, and like I said, I don't want to take anything away from the women's program or anything like that, but I just think that they're starting to see, because, I mean, you have to look at right now, there are a lot of players that are going to retire from that team. Our coach, we've had 3 coaches now, and the past 2 won, but now we have this coach who's in, and this is new to him, and he's going to have new players. And I think that other coach was like, oh no, the world's stepping up. I don't know if I can win it for the next
So
one.
he just got out in time.
Got out, man. Like,
on the wall.
like, get out on a high as much as he can. And I don't blame him, because he was, she was a bit older, or he, I don't remember, but they just got out as fast as they could, because they're like, I think this last World Cup was pretty competitive. Like, yeah, Thailand, got smothered by the United States, but I think France played great. I think France should have won it, or would have been the winner if a lot of things hadn't happened. But I think the United States struggled against Sweden. I think they struggled against Germany, but it still was where we won. But I think that coach realized, like, these other countries are stepping up and pumping money into their programs, into the women's program. And that's what other countries that are pretty decent at soccer with their men's side are starting to do with their female. Like, hey, people are watching this sport now. Oh, okay, well, let's start pumping it into our programs. Like, oh, we have a women's league that's 8 women's leagues. Okay, well, let's pump it in, and let's get better players, and let's get people to come sign here. Like, I mean, England the same way. England's women's soccer wasn't relevant 10 years ago, and now they went to the semis or quarterfinals. Yeah. Why? Because they started pumping money into their women's program. Like, they're like, hey, Man City, you're doing great. Chelsea, you're doing great. Manchester United, you're doing great. Hey, we want better women's programs. We want English women to play good, play as well. Oh, okay. So they started pumping money into their women's programs, and we started seeing it, that it's not going to be the U.S.'s, like, just, oh, hey, the U.S. is in there. Oh, they got it. Like, it's not going to be like that anymore. It's going to be where the U.S. are going to have to compete and might not. Maybe this next one, they'll still make the finals. But I think after that, if they're on the same path they've always been, where there's no philosophy, there's no methodology behind it, I don't see them getting into, the semis or anything. So I don't know. I might eat my words, and I'd love for them to make me eat my words, because it's the only championship the United States has in soccer. So I'd love for them to keep making more championships out of it.
It'd be nice. But yeah, I mean, definitely the money here goes to different places. Or, like, I was talking to a friend one time, and he was saying that because our throwers have never been world class. I think there's a couple here and there that have done really well. But, like, in the United States, like a discus thrower, shot put thrower, hammer thrower is also a pretty good body type for a lineman or a linebacker, a running back. And those guys who might be phenomenal world-class throwers are like, oh well, I'd rather play football. And maybe, maybe they make it to the league, maybe they get a scholarship to college, something like that. But it's like, what if you would have done this? I feel like there's
Yeah.
probably some soccer athletes like that too, who even like some of those phenomenal receivers, if they would have played soccer instead of football growing up, who knows what would have happened. But the draw
Yeah.
is basketball, football, not baseball as much, but
Well, I mean, if you ask me right now, if I had a son who was in high school and he's getting offers to D1, D2 soccer and D1, D2 baseball, I'm going to tell him to play baseball. It's just a sport where money is not an object. Like, I mean, obviously it's a very low chance you make it into the major leagues, but if you do, and let's say you play AAA or you finally get into the league, you're making really good money, and it's not as much wear and tear on your body. So it sucks because it's just money is a factor in some things. Like, yeah, those discus throwers, are great linesmen, but they could win Olympic gold at that same discus throw.
Well, and then kind of what you were saying though, Olympic gold medals don't pay nearly as much as NFL contracts, which is insane. But
that's why some sports is just like swimming, gymnastics. Yeah, you want to be on the highest level, which is the Olympics. Discus throwing and javelin throw, and I can't remember the jump one, but you're not going to get all the best actual athletes of it because they probably went to another sport.
Yeah.
In the United States and obviously in other countries maybe as well, but it's like there's no point to it. It's like, yeah, you got an Olympic gold, but what are you doing outside of that? Well, I have to train kids, or you become a trainer or something, or you become a coach of it, and that's great. Like, that's a good life, but it's not like, okay, I have to choose between playing in the NFL or going to the Olympics. Oh, I'm going to go play for the NFL. Like, I'm going to go do that instead. So it's a money driven factor, but even in your own sports, like if you're playing football, great. Yeah, I'd rather play football at Clemson, who's offering me a scholarship, than this D2 school that's offering me a soccer scholarship, which I'm good at. I'm not great, but Clemson's offering me a full paid scholarship to play football. Yeah, I'm going to go to Clemson. Yeah. I'm going to play football. So, I mean, it's money driven, but it is how it is. It just has to go that way. But until we start pumping money into our programs, and not just money, and actually having, a methodology, we're not going to see it in soccer here. And I think we're sometimes we take a step forward, but then we fire somebody or we just release somebody because of just pressure, or we didn't make the World Cup, so sorry, you're out. And then we just take like 3 steps back because it's just like now someone else is coming with a new philosophy, a new methodology, and they don't agree with the MLS, what they do, and then we're just back to square one.
Well, that's what you're doing, huh? You're going to fix it at the 9th grade level, taking step 1.
I mean, that's what I hope I'm doing with my program. Obviously, I want to build my program. I think sometimes my head coach has other ideas of like, hey, just worry about the freshmen. But I'm just like, no, I want to work together. Like, I want us to have talent from the 7th grade all the way to 12th playing the exact same way. And I think I'm getting to him where he's like, oh, we could have done that. And I mean, it's nothing against like what other people do. I don't want to go into someone and tell them they're doing their job wrong or anything like that. It's just that I think if we start focusing on just like, I actually had 10 7th graders and 3 8th graders come to my camp. And I won't see them obviously for another year or two, but I may come or ask them to come to my camp because I'm like, I've seen you play when you were in 5th grade. I know you. I know how you play. Now, if you come to camp, you're going to understand how I coach. And then if I could help those other coaches, those middle school coaches or junior high coaches, coach you the same way I'm going to coach you, you're going to come to me and you're going to be like, oh, we've already done this. And I'm going to be like, well, let let me get you to understand why this is beneficial. Not just I did this already. Let me get you to understand why it's beneficial, instead of you coming to me in August and you go, I've never done this in my life. And then I got to teach you from square one. So, and that's the other coach that I was like, that's where it begins, where we start. Like, I'm giving you freshmen like, hey, this kid's worthy of this position, or he's done great at this position, and it's not last year where you had a wrestling coach that was your freshman coach. They come in, yeah, they're good at soccer. They're great, but they have no idea how to play in your system, and they're lost. So,
well, we ran into that with strength and conditioning, where it's because I was whenever I interned at U of H, I was coaching college kids, and some of them had never been in a weight room before. So they're learning from square one at 18, whereas in high school we were teaching 8th graders how to lift weights. So it's just kind of like, and I mean, I know there's not a huge philosophy change, but it's like, hey, listen, if you start lifting weights in 7th grade, and nothing heavy, but we're learning the technique. By the time you get to 9th grade, now you know what you're doing. Injuries are going to be way less. You're going to be able to move some more weight. By the time you get to college, your college strength coach is just like, okay, cool. Let's just keep doing what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And then but I think all the way up.
I think what you hit on, but you didn't actually say, is that weight room can still be a cardio workout. It can still be something that makes your heart go into a different level.
Oh, yeah.
But still be almost the same as you running, like you going out to the treadmill or you going out on the field. Because, I mean, there have been times where, you do simple things of just like you're doing an ab workout, and one of the section is 30 seconds of mountain climbers. Well, that's a cardio workout, but it's also working on your ab muscles. So I think I think with soccer, people didn't understand. They're like, oh, no, I don't want to build muscle. It's going to make me slow. Or I don't want to get like jacked. No, I'm not asking you to get jacked. What I'm asking you to understand is that there are tendons and muscles that you need to make sure that you've gotten stronger, so that those injuries are less likely, or you return back a lot faster than what that injury would have been without you going to the weight room. And that, I mean, I honestly, my next thing after I'm done with my Barcelona education thing is learning like how to coach in the weight room. Like, I don't want to be a conditioning coach or strength and conditioning coach, but I want to have the basics, or an education level. It's just like, this is how we should go in there. I'm not asking you I don't want you to hit 300 pounds in bench. Like, if you can do that, great. But I want you to be able to lift this 185 with no problem, get high reps, and build that muscle in your chest, build that muscle in your biceps. Because one of the terrible things is you go out onto the field and you get bullied around by this kid who's got 40 pounds on you. But if, you train your body to be strong, well, that 40 pounds isn't going to matter if you have the strength to, push him off the ball as well. So
one thing, I think, like you said, just the best way to prevent injury, strengthen those tendons, strengthen the muscles around it. And then a lot of people are like, oh, how do I get faster? How do I get jump higher? Get stronger. Yeah. And I think there's a big thing in the weight room, like especially among strength coaches, where they're strong enough, like especially with soccer, any distance athletes, anyone who has to move, sprinters especially, because at a certain point, when you're maybe not necessarily too strong, but the strength doesn't what's the word? Translate. The strength doesn't translate. So, hey, maybe I can squat 185 and that's why I'm the fastest. But if I get strong enough to squat 200, now I've gained too much weight, so I'm slowing down a little bit. And that's specifically, for sprinters. But in soccer, it'd be the same way, where you're, like you said, hey, we don't need you to get to 3. If you can do 300, and that doesn't limit anything, then fine, we're going to get strong. But also, I mean, I think Cristiano Ronaldo is probably the best example of a jacked player, and he's not bulky. He's just shredded. And if you're like, oh, he doesn't lift weights, I would venture to say you're incorrect.
Yeah. And I think that's what I'm saying. Like, Josie Altidore probably squats more than Cristiano Ronaldo. But I think Cristiano Ronaldo, their weight that they need to do is completely different.
Yeah.
this is Josie Altidore's weight that he squats at and keeps him at the level he wants to be at.
Right.
This is the weight that Cristiano does. So it's I mean, that's where it kind of runs into, is just like, you have to kind of be educated in it. That's why I tell kids, I go, don't go out there trying to, set your PR right now, because that's not what I'm asking you to do. What I'm asking you to do is you need to do 10 sets of this, and I need it done correctly. At what weight can you do them correctly? I don't know, like 135. Okay, then put 135 on there. I want you to do 10 of those correctly and where you still feel it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you to put 10 pounds on it and you're just like, oh, this is easy. I was like, if you watch, people who do this, I go, there are people who squat with no weight first to make sure their form is correct, and then build up to the PR. I go, they get, I don't know, they go from the 45 to 180. They do that, and they're like, okay, I feel fine. That worked out. That's great. They rack it. They put the next weight. They're now at 240 or whatever. And then they just keep going. And then they're like, okay, now I'm ready to try and hit that PR because my form is nice. I've gotten up to this one. I was like, they don't just walk in there and say, oh, yeah, put that 480, let's go. Like, not warmed up for it, but let me do it. Like, that's not how it goes. I was like, they have to warm themselves up to it as well. I go, not all the time. I go, they don't start with just the bar. But I go, to be honest, I was like, as your coach, I start with the bar because my max is not that high. I go, so I go with the bar. I look in the mirror, or I look at myself in a window, and I say, all right, my form is fine. And if it's not fine, I correct it, and then I add, a little bit of weight until I go, okay, this is my max weight. So
then, like you're saying, everyone's got a different max. So a guy who can squat 650 pounds, 400 pounds to him doesn't feel like 400 pounds to you. Mm-hmm. Whereas, hey, my max is 300. All right, well, maybe you should be at 200. Mm-hmm. So, and you're still working as hard. It's just a different weight.
Yeah,
like you're saying,
that's
what I told
my. Yeah, it's a cardio workout. It still is. Oh, yeah. I go, sometimes it doesn't feel that way because you walk around or you're on your phone or you do something like that. I go, but if you look at the people who are, they're doing this as a dedication. I go, they're sweating, their heart rate's up, they're losing fat, and they're building muscle while doing this workout because it's almost like a high intensity workout that they're doing. I go, they're not just sitting there. No,
your heart rate, especially with squats, your heart rate goes through the roof.
Yeah, I go, it puts your heart under stress. Like it's like running a sprint. So it's not the same thing where you're using the same muscles. I go, but I go, your heart will move. I go, those mountain climbers isn't there just so I can fill in 30 seconds. I go, it's there because I know that it's going to hit your abs the same way the Russian twist are. I go, you can have weight on it that way. I was like, it's going to hit it the same way a plank is. I go, but it's also going to build up your cardio at the same time. So that's why I do it. But it's been fun. It's honestly been fun learning all these new things. I'm trying to plan out a freshman tournament. I remember the coach asked me, like, he's like, are you sure you want to play people in your district? I go, hell yeah. I go, you don't get better as a district if you don't play each other from the beginning.
Yeah.
I go, EPL teams, they're all on the TV. You can scout report that easily. They allow scouts to come watch their games. It's not a surprise.
Yeah.
It shouldn't be a surprise. Now, like your tactic board, no. Like, I don't want somebody in my training room or my dressing room.
Yeah.
I go, but do I want to play people in my district? Hell yeah. I want to play them all the time. I want to play people outside my district. I want to play people in my district. I don't care when. I don't care if they find out who my best player is. I don't care about that because my plan should be how I can beat them no matter what. No matter who's on the field.
Yeah.
I can be able to try and beat them.
So and at the same time, they see what you do. They know who your best players, but you're watching them as well. So
exactly. So and he's told me, he's like, a lot of coaches agree to that. I'm like, well, if they don't agree, they don't come. I go, I mean, I could still plan. If I get enough teams, I can plan around where we play different teams. I go, but if somebody comes up to me and is like, hey, I don't want you to, I'm going to look at you and I'm going to be like, you do understand I could sit in the stands and just watch your team from here, right? I can do that when you play another team outside of district. I can just show up to the field, pay the $5 to get in, sit up at the top, and just watch your whole team. And I mean, there's no surprise. There shouldn't be a surprise. Your surprise should be, I can beat you no matter what with whoever I have on the field. Yeah. And that's just the coaching mentality we need. But
that's what's going to change things.
I hope. But bro, I'm going to be honest, this has been fun. I haven't gotten to talk about this a lot. I usually just listen to it on the radio. So yeah, I'm glad you're on this thing.
Well, then that's, like I said, I'm glad you got a chance to tell. It's basically because you're doing this, the Coffee Nap soccer stuff, right? This is just a long form of it, a little more.
I deleted it because it's just, I had so much things going on, and then with school, it was just I was too distracted. Yeah. And I'll be honest, that Christmas timeline that the EPL has, it's hard to keep up with it, even to make a minute video. So yeah. I'm not good at that part, but anytime you want to have me on here, if you keep doing this, which I'm happy you are, I'll gladly be on. I mumble a lot, but I'll be on. Just add subtitles under me.
Sounds good. Hey, I appreciate you taking time, just hanging out. Hey, I'm glad we just got to sit down and talk. It's been a while since, we went to the bar not too long, but other than that, we haven't seen each other in a while. So
nah, dude, that was the last time.
Just sit down and be face to face as close as we can be to it. So
yeah. Next time I'll have a beer. I made this so professional. I should next time just have a beer and talk.
Well, that's because you were like, send me notes, and I was like, oh man, he might take this serious.
No, it wasn't like I wanted to be serious. I just like to have an idea of like what I'm gonna. Be honest, like I wrote most of the stuff down, or just like points, like EPL positive, no tours, negative, injuries. So I said that, but I talked it out mostly. No, but, I will. Well, before this ends, I do want to say, for Man United, Bruno and Pogba look great. We need to get rid of dead weight. I love Jesse Lingard when he first played for Manchester United. He is now dead weight. He's not focused, or he needs to be on loan somewhere and like kind of like a wake up call, like, hey, we're gonna send you to AC Milan because they need players, and he's gonna be like, oh shit, like this isn't locked up for me, and I have to go prove himself. And if he does great, be like, all right, we'll call you back. But and I hope if Manchester United can sign Jadon Sancho from Borussia Dortmund, that'll be huge. That'll be extremely huge. I think we'll be contenders. I don't know if like we'll win it, but I think there are a lot more teams that are going to be contenders. The only one that I don't think will be contenders because they have everything mixed up and have no idea what to do is Arsenal. They have no idea. I think
they've looked a little sloppy in these past couple of games since they've come back, which was surprising to me. But it is what it is.
They have a great striker. They have great midfield players. Their defense does need work, but they just can't unlock that final third. And I don't know what to say about that. Like it's just looked bad from the beginning. And firing your coach mid-season is not good. And hiring a coach that might not be ready for it isn't good either. So we'll see. I just think that Manchester United, obviously Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, I think Wolves are going to be pretty big. Leicester City. I think the teams that we're seeing right now in the top 6, I think those teams will be ready for next year, and like we can sign players and we can take it to the next step. And I think Manchester United has signing Bruno, you see a change, and post Bruno or pre Bruno to post Bruno, I even see a change in how Pogba wants to play. He's like, oh, I'm excited to play now. I like what that guy's doing on the field. So I see an excitement in this team that I haven't seen in the past 4 years, 5 years. So I'm excited. I think next year could be a breakout year. And if it's not, then, well, you tried.
Yeah. Hey, and shout out to Anthony Martial. He got his first hat trick, right, in the Premier League?
Yeah, his first hat trick with Manchester United, and our first hat trick since 2013.
Wow.
Crazy. crazy to think that we have not had a hat trick by any other player. The last player was Robin Van Persie.
That's what I was gonna say. That was because 2013 was when we were living together.
Yeah, it was a while back. That was our last trophy too.
Yeah.
Or not last trophy. I'm sorry, our last Premier League trophy. So it's been a while since we've done great things, but
it's almost like being a Cowboys fan.
I
think being a Cowboys fan is a lot worse, but
yeah, I'm gonna say that one's a little worse because it's just like there's only one trophy you can win. I mean, I've been happy that we won the FA Cup. I've been happy that we won the Europa, that we've gotten far in Champions League, but it's just there sometimes where I'm just like, I don't see what we're doing. Like, what's our end goal here? What do we want to do? And I think they're starting to put it together where they want these players to be. And they're just going to get rid of dead weight. Like, hey, thanks for the year that you've given, or past years, but it's no longer like, oh, this guy's a legend, we need him. It's like I love Juan Mata. I think what he does for the world is great. I think he's a class player, but I don't think it's what Manchester United need right now. They don't need that. They need a young player ready to counterattack and ready to play, and that's not him. He's had to step back. But I think if Juan Mata wanted to sign for the Dynamo, easily, I'd be like that. You need to sign him. Like, that's a great player you need. Like, you need a midfield player like that. But for what Manchester United needs against like top teams like Manchester City and Liverpool, Juan Mata doesn't do that anymore. And I think we need to start realizing that he's done a great service, but we no longer need you. Like, sorry. That's it.
Cutthroat.
I mean,
that's what it takes.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. I mean, Chelsea had Kevin De Bruyne. Chelsea had him, and Mourinho is like, he doesn't fit in my scheme, and he's just honest with them. And I think De Bruyne was like, you're right. I don't want to play the way you want me to play. I want to play attacking.
Yeah.
So went to Wolfsburg, played in an attacking system, and then Pep Guardiola was like, I want that kid on my team. He's a great player. And now look at him. Like, I hate to say it, but
I think it worked out.
Yeah, he's one of the great. Like, if he would have stuck at Chelsea and not done well, Wolfsburg probably would have been like, nah, we don't want him. And who knows what would have happened to him. Since he and Mourinho like agreed, like, hey, we have different philosophies and what we want to do. I think that was the best thing for him. So, and not to like go on more tangents, but like, that's a video I'm going to show kids. Like, just because I don't pick you for this team doesn't mean you go out and stop training. Like, keep going. My philosophy of what I want you might not be what the next guy wants you at. I was like, I'm not saying you should go change schools or anything, but like, you never know. Like, you could still play somewhere. Like, there's leagues, there's recreational, like, still go out and train. And if you come back JV, or you come back the next year as a sophomore, and I see you doing better, but you're not at JV level and I want you, I can get you on freshman as a sophomore. I can get you back on there and you play for that season. And then who knows, for JV, you're ready for it by 11th grade. So I was like, I saw his interview with Roger Bennett, the guy from what's that show? Men in Blazers.
Yeah.
And I mean, he was just honest. He's like, no, me and Jose just didn't have we didn't have the same ideas. So I didn't want to play for that. And he was blunt with me and said, I don't want you on the team. I don't want you on the starting lineup because you don't fit in what I want. So Kevin was like, okay, I want to go somewhere where I fit in somewhere. And he fit in Wolfsburg and then eventually fit in Manchester City and has won the title without Jose Mourinho. So
the rest is history.
Exactly. All he needs to do now is just stay healthy, and
he is one of my favorite players to watch, though. I'm a big De Bruyne fan. Like you said, I hate that he's on City, but I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, no, I mean, I saw him a couple of times at Wolfsburg in the big games against Dortmund and Bayern, and he looked great. I mean, if he would have stayed at Wolfsburg, and I think they could have actually like challenged for the title and done well, but if Pep Guardiola wants you, you kind of know. And you look at the guy's record of who he's played with, like Messi and all these other midfielders at Bayern Munich, like all of them, like Frank Ribery and all that, you're like, oh, this guy knows if he wants me, that means I'm doing awesome. I need to go.
Yeah.
Sorry. So there's no way you're passing that.
But hey, it worked out. It definitely worked out.
Oh yeah. But yeah, brother, I'm gonna eat some dinner.
Sounds good. I think we gotta make a run to HEB soon.
Gotcha, man.
Go get some toilet paper.
Good luck finding that one, man. Good luck.
All right, but hey, I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for it's 2 hours. We were here for 2 hours, so thanks for hanging out with me.
Holy shit. All right, cool, man. All right, I'll see you, bud.
All right, take it easy.
You too, bro.
Love you.
Love you too, man.